What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Fish at the Moment. Today I'm on Table Rock Lake with professional angler Randy Blaukat. What's up, Randy? And today we're going to be going out on Table Rock to do a little experiment. I'm actually going to be fishing offshore using my electronics, graphing around, looking for fish that are off the bank. And Table Rock's super flooded right now, so it's going to be interesting to see how I adapt to these high water conditions to find fish offshore. At the same time, Randy's going to be going out in his boat, and he's not going to turn his electronics on at all. And he's going to focus on fishing shallow, visible cover. And with the lake 17 feet high, there's a lot of that to choose from. And so it should be really interesting to see which technique is the better technique today on Table Rock, offshore fishing or fishing up shallow. So let's see. Randy, good luck. Let's get after it. Got him. There we go. First fish of the day here on the Spybait. Stay down fish. These fish can toss the Spybait pretty easy. You gotta play them real soft. Saw a bunch of fish suspended on my graph out here. Out in front of this island, there's not really that much bait fish out here. I just saw a ton of dots just suspended, and I tried to throw a hair jig down on them. They would not touch it, but I threw this Spybait out there. I'm thinking it's probably gonna be a smallmouth. And if it is, it's probably gonna be a pretty good one. Oh, nice spotted bass, actually. Nice one. Way out here off this flat, gradual sloping island, and that is a nice spot right there. Choke the Spybait. Oh, there's a bunch of them following them too. There's like 4 or 5 following them. Holy cow. Let me get this guy up here. Oh, there we go. Beautiful spotted bass. First thing in the morning here, that guy actually spit up a shad. You can see that fish is fat, and he choked it. Just lifting a little dual Realis Spybait. I haven't thrown this on my channel much, guys, but one of my favorite offshore baits to fish, especially in this post-spawn, is this little Spybait. And I'll get into how I'm fishing it, why I'm fishing, all that stuff. But man, that is a nice spotted bass. Let's get him unhooked real quick. There we go, beautiful spotted bass. Got him on the Spybait. So this guy on the scales, I want to see how much he weighs. 2 pounds, 3 ounces, just a 2-pounder. Nothing crazy, but 2-pound spots out here are really good way to start your day. And my plan today for my offshore fishing is to try to put a limit of these 2-pound spotted bass in the boat, then go try to find some bigger smallmouth or some bigger largemouth in different area of the lake. And I might catch some largemouth and smallmouth doing this as well, but that's a beautiful spot. Let's get back in the lake. There we go, let's get him back down there. Nice fish. Took off like a shot too. Got that fish on the Duo Realis Spybait or Spinbait 80, and it's basically just this little prop bait that goes subsurface. It sinks, and you reel it really slow as if you're fishing like a swim bait for suspended bass. And a lot of times, the spotted bass and smallmouth in these clear water lakes will eat the Spybait a lot better than they will a swim bait, just because it's a little bit different from what a lot of people are throwing. And so I'm gonna talk a little bit more about the gear and everything for this bait. But for now, let's get back down. There's a bunch of fish on the graph, and that fish I caught had 4 or 5 big spots following it, you know, those 2-pounders, 2.5-pounders. And so I want to see if I can get back down there, get some more fish in the boat. That's what I'm talking about, guys. Got him. Another one, another good one. They're stacked up right here. Next cast on this spot. Don't want to work him too hard because this is a good fish. Back us away from here a little bit. This is one thing I do a lot, guys, when I'm fighting fish, especially if I'm on the school of them. I will back away from a little bit, and I kind of have a spot marked on my graph of where these fish are. Wow, that's a big one. I don't know what it is, but it's a nice fish. Oh, big smallmouth. Oh, I'll take him around the boat. He's swimming. When you get these little tiny hooks, guys, you gotta play these fish really soft. Especially when you have a big smallie like this on. Oh, there we go. Nice smallmouth right there on the Spybait. Next cast after catching That spotted bass, boom, beautiful smallie. Look at that thing, as long and nice. Whew, look at that one little hook in the corner of its mouth. That's when it just literally fell out. That's why you have to play them super soft. You have to use good hooks. That's some Gamakatsu number 5s that I switched out from the stock hooks. It has a beautiful smallmouth. Oh, dude, this is what I'm talking about. Let me get out here, get this guy on the scales. Oh my gosh. 2 pounds, 15 ounces. That's the size bass we're looking for. If we can get 5 of those in the boat, we're having a great day out here on Table Rock. Beautiful fish. Let's get back in the lake. Beautiful fish. Let's get back down the lake. Nice one. Oh, there we go, guys. Got him on that dual Realis Spybait, the Spinbait 80. And I'm upgrading stock treble hooks on this bait to size 5 Gamakatsu round bends. I'm throwing it on a Falcon BuCoo 7-foot medium action rod with a REVO spinning reel, 10-pound braided line to a 6-pound fluorocarbon leader. And all I'm doing to fish this bait, guys, is casting it out, letting it sink down to the level those fish were at, which is about 10 to 12 feet of water. So I'm letting it sink for about 8 seconds, and then I'm just going to start slowly reeling that bait in. And you don't need to impart a lot of action to the Spybait. It has a great wobble and side-to-side motion because of those little props on it. And the whole idea with this bait is you want to just give it as little action as possible. Just reel it in, let the bait do all the work. And when these fish are a little bit tough to get to bite, this Spybait is one of the few ways I found to get them to actually eat. And it's a great technique in clear water. Again, you see that both fish that bit this bait just kind of nipped at it, and if I was throwing like a swim bait or something like that, a lot of times they might just take the tail off that swim bait. But with the Spybait, even if they just nip at it, you can catch them with one of those treble hooks and you're good to go. And so just keep that slow, steady retrieve. When that bait gets down the depth zone, they'll load up on it and you'll be in business.
So while I was catching him offshore on the Spybait, Randy was going up shallow fishing the flooded trees and bushes around the bank. And this was my first time filming with Randy on the lake, and we actually had some technical difficulties with the video and the audio, so I didn't get all of his fish catches or any audio on these clips. We'll definitely improve this going forward, but I'm just going to give you a recap of what Randy was doing on Table Rock and how he was able to find some fish. With the lake being 15 to 17 feet high, the water had pushed back 15 to 30 yards back into these trees, and that left a ton of water for these fish to hide in. You could go all the way to the newly flooded bank where you could fish in people's backyards, or you could sit out on the outside trees that were in 12 to 15 feet of water and try to catch some fish out there. And with all this water to cover, Randy started by trying to flip some of the outside trees on points in the mouths of spawning pockets. And he was throwing a 3/4 to 1 ounce jig and flipping these trees that were in that 10 to 15 foot range. And this is a great technique to use when you have flooded trees, especially when you're getting more towards that summertime period, water temperatures are getting above 75 degrees. The reason is because these bass are going to be in that post-spawn mood, and they'll spawn back in the spawning pockets and are making their way out of the spawning pockets to the main lake points. And this is where a lot of bluegill and bait fish will be hanging out. And Randy was able to get a few bites flipping these outside trees, but nothing really that big, maybe 1.5 to 2 pounders. And because there was so much water flooded up into the trees, he decided to make his way into the jungle and try to find some fish a little bit shallower. The only issue here is that there was so much flooded cover that it spread these bass out like crazy. And he was able to see some fish cruising in among the trees, especially in the clear water down by the dam here, but the fish were very spooky because the water was so clear. And the only way he could really get in among these trees is by using his trolling motor to weave in and out. And by using his trolling motor, he was causing a lot of commotion, which was spooking a lot of these really shallow fish. And so he said that he saw several fish in the 3 to 5 pound range cruising in these trees, but he couldn't be stealthy enough to actually get a bait in front of those fish before they saw the boat. And he did try throwing a floating worm and a frog and a topwater back in and among these trees to try to get a fish to bite. And he actually had a couple fish follow his baits. But again, because we had these bright bluebird skies, no wind, really bad conditions honestly for fishing in this very clear water, he wasn't able to get any of those fish to commit to his bait even though he could see them. And so he went back to flipping some of the outside bushes, and he actually did get one really good bite, a fish between 4.5 pounds, but it came off halfway to the boat, and I actually didn't get a clip of this. We had, again, the technical difficulties, but really at the end of the day, Randy had 4 keeper bites and he landed 3 of them, and he probably only had anywhere from 4.5 to 6 pounds for those 3 fish that he landed. And so really the challenge for Randy was trying to navigate the immense amount of cover that was newly flooded on Table Rock, and this again spread the fish out and made them hard to come by. And if you watch the clips here, he is flipping a ton. He probably made, I would guess, 1,000 to 1,500 flips in 6 hours. And so he is making casts constantly. He's also moving around pretty often, trying to find a group of fish set up on these outside trees. He's running from one group to another. And when you're making that many pitches, you would think that the odds would be in your favor that you would land it in front of some fish, and he did. It's just that there was so much cover in the water and these fish were so spread out that even though he was making 1,000 casts, he still didn't have good enough odds to put 10 to 15 good keeper bass in the boat. And again, that's partially because of the conditions we were facing today, partially because he was in the clear water, and also because of the high water. And so in a bit, Randy's actually going to recap his day with me once we get off the lake, and I'll let him explain a little bit more in detail. But for now, let's get back out in the lake with me, and I actually found some more fish in the Spybait, and then I'll show you how I was catching them.
Oh God, got him. Good one. Second fish to hit that bait too. There's a group of them right here, guys, off this point. Saw them all over the graph. Repeated my pattern through the Spybait down there, and boom, hooked up another good fish. Don't know how big this one is, but feels pretty good. Oh, they're all over the spot, guys. There's fish busting out there deeper too. This feels like a big smallie again, it looks like, or feels like. Again, just barely got that bait. Oh, there we go. Nice smallmouth right there. Got him in the corner of the mouth again. Beautiful fish, another keeper. These are all really good quality fish out here, and they're busting on this point. I'm seeing bait all over. This is about to go down, guys. Nice fish. Let's get him on the scale real quick. 2 pounds, 4 ounces, just a 2-pounder, but there's a bunch more where that one came from. So let's get this guy back in the lake, get back down there, get another one. This is happening today, guys, with this Spybait, these smallmouth, these spotted bass. They're gonna be chewing this thing. If I can get enough spots, I probably can get about 15 pounds of smallies doing this, just based on what I'm seeing right now. Well, I'm fishing for like 45 minutes, and I already have 3 keepers, 1 good smallmouth, and the last spot I was fishing too, I probably can go back to it later today. I was messing around with the fish, weighing them and stuff like that, and got them, another one. And that school cooled off, but usually if you can keep that school fired up, they will just keep eating and eating and eating. Oh, big jump off that fish. They are all over this stuff, guys. It's about to be a fun day. Oh, he broke me off. Dang it. I probably should have retied after all those smallies. Broke me clean off. That was another probably 2.5 pounder, 2 3/4 pounder. Let me get another Spybait down there. Get back down there. They're eating that thing.
So while I retie, here's a spot where I just caught that fish and lost another one. It's just a gradual sloping point next to a main river channel, and there's a really nice drop off from 15 to 20 feet of water into 80 to 100 feet of water in that creek channel. And these bass are sitting up on top of this point in that 15 to 30 foot of water range, and I'm positioning my boat in the deeper water in that creek channel anywhere from 80 to 100 feet, and then making my casts into the shallower water. And if you can see on the graph here, these bass are suspended in anywhere from 10 to 15 feet of water over 25 to 30 feet of water, chasing bait fish. And the only way I can get these fish to bite again is by throwing that Spybait, letting it sink down, and working it at the same level that those bass are suspended in. And whenever I can get my bait down there, they're eating it. The only problem I was having is that I couldn't get my bait back to those fish fast enough because I was filming, talking to the camera, weighing the fish, and then also breaking off. And whenever you break off a fish or lose a fish on one of these offshore areas, a lot of times that will shut down the school, and the fish that you lose will go back down and kind of tattletale on you to the other bass and shut down that spot. And that's what happened here. It actually happened on several other spots throughout the day. I found a few more areas where you had a creek channel close to a gradual sloping point, just like these areas here, and there were bass suspended on top of these points. And I was actually able to get these fish to bite a spybait, but I kept losing them for some reason. And I couldn't really figure out why for the longest time. I was using brand new hooks, I was fighting them very softly, and I think I lost anywhere from 3 to 4 fish that would have been in that 2.5 to 3 pound range, and I probably should have about 15 pounds of bass for my best 5 if I had landed all my fish. And I didn't realize what was going on until I lost another 2.5 to 3 pounder, and I think I figured it out.
Yeah, that spybait is definitely the best way to catch these better than average fish. They just toss it so easily, guys. Golly, that's such a good one. They're just jumping like crazy. They'll eat it. I just can't keep them hooked up. I need to think a different setup on this rod. This rod is not probably the best for this setup. This is a 7-foot medium. I might need like a 7-foot medium light. I almost need like a crankbait rod that bends more because they just throw this bait too easy. I don't really know how to really keep them on, but it works. I mean, it hooks them. They'll bite it, but keeping them pinned is so tough.
And I've actually done some additional testing with the Spybait since this fishing day, and I realized that it wasn't the rod that I was using that was causing me to lose fish, it was my line. I was using 10-pound braided line connected to a 6-pound fluorocarbon leader, and that braid doesn't have any stretch in it, and it was causing those hooks to pull out of those fish's mouth when they would surge or when they would thrash around. And so instead, I switched over to straight fluorocarbon on my spinning reel, just 6-pound fluorocarbon, and what happened is that those fish were able to take that bait into their mouth a little bit better, and it wasn't pulling that hook out of the fish's mouth when they were thrashing around and then causing them to throw it when they jumped. A lot of times when those fish were jumping, they weren't losing the bait because of the jump, they were losing it because that small hook was tearing a hole in their mouth when I would set the hook with that braid. And so by switching over to the straight fluorocarbon, I was able to land a lot more fish. And you might be also wondering why I was continuing through that spybait and not switching over to, let's say, a jerkbait or a swim bait. And I actually did throw a swim bait quite a bit on this day and caught a few fish, but for whatever reason, the quality of the fish I was catching on the swim bait was a lot smaller than the fish on the spybait. I was getting a lot of pound to pound-and-a-half size fish on the swim bait, but the spybait was producing those 2.5 to 3.5 pound fish. I just couldn't get them in the boat because of my setup, but now I know the correct setup to use, and I know that this is definitely a very effective technique for catching a lot of fish and really good fish when you have these post-front, bright bluebird sky days, no wind, and those fish are very tough to catch, and they're suspended offshore. So when it was all said and done, I ended up catching a limit of fish offshore that went anywhere from 11 to 12 pounds. But I ended up losing several good fish and should have had anywhere from 14 to 15 pounds if I had put them all in the boat. On the flip side of shallow, Randy only was able to put 3 keepers in the boat that went anywhere from 5 to 6 pounds, and a lot of that came down to the area of the lake that we were fishing and the conditions on our given fishing day. So at the end of the day, I regrouped with Randy and we talked about how our fishing days went and how we have changed our approach in the areas of the lake we're fishing to put more fish in the boat.
So Randy, how'd it go?
Man, it was a grind for me today. I came out a couple days ago and fished for a couple hours and caught like 10 fish flipping bushes, and I thought today I'd just go out and catch 25 or 30, doing it all day long, and it just did not work out like that. I spent 95% of my day fishing the main points on the lower end of the lake here in the clear water, and I concentrated on the points because the point bushes, when you have this much water in the lake, they're a little bit shallower and it gives them something to concentrate on a little bit more. And I thought going out this morning that the whole key was to identify the type of tree they'd be in, because you've got willow trees, buckbrush, you've got maples, you got oaks, you got sycamore trees, and a lot of times these fish on Table Rock Lake, they get specifically on certain type of trees. They'll get on sycamores one day, on willows one day, and the bites I had today were out of the willow trees, and obviously I fished a lot of that, and they just weren't in there. I mean, if those bass were in there in this clear water, I rotated baits up. I was fishing probably 90% of the time a one ounce jig with a Zoom speed craw on it. Yeah. Because I wanted something to get down there real fast, because I didn't want to have a chance to look at it in that clear water, and I could cover a lot of water with the heavy jig. But I also mixed them up with some smaller soft plastics, and it didn't work. But I committed to it all day long. I thought it was just a matter of finding the right water for it. In retrospect, if I had to do it again, I'd probably look for a little bit dirtier water, because 8-10 foot of visibility where we fish today, I think a lot of those fish just pulled out deeper and each day they're just pulling out deeper.
Yeah, and I found a lot of those fish out off the points offshore, and one thing that I found interesting is I actually went into Long Creek, which had dirtier water, like 2.5 foot of visibility. When I got back in there, the bait fish were only about 4 to 5 feet deep in the water, even if I was over like 50, 60 feet of water. Or when I was down in the clear end, I was able to see bait all the way down to 30 feet.
Yeah.
And so a lot of that bait fish had already pulled out, which I think pulled a lot of those fish out of the bushes as well. And so I think you're right, and if you had maybe been flipping in Long Creek, you probably would have done a little bit better. And a lot of times that's what happens. If you get to the right section of the lake, that's all it takes to make the shallow bite turn on.
Yeah, and probably if I had to go out tomorrow, what I would do is, the water's at flood stage down here right now, I'd probably go up to an area that had like maybe 3 to 5 foot visibility, and I'd go to the areas where I could find the bank, like, like parks or yards or something like that, where I could fish the isolated oak trees or something like that. I just feel that those fish want to be shallow in that water visibility, but down here there's too many options for them. Once you get into that little bit off-colored water, they have a tendency not to want to go out and to set up like where you caught them today, out over that deep water.
Yeah, and I think that that's really key to know, that if you get into a certain area of the lake, a lot of times you may not be able to use every single bait or ever approach your tackle box. Like where we started down by the dam, the offshore bite was great. I was getting a lot of bites, not landing a lot of fish. That Spybait was giving me some issues on landing them, but I was getting a lot of bites, seeing a lot of fish, and you were kind of struggling. But at the same time, if I was launching maybe up in the James River with you, maybe I wouldn't have caught very many fish offshore at all, because in that little bit dirtier water, those fish would be staying shallow.
Right. It's a process of elimination out here, because Table Rock's a big lake. It's close to 50,000 acre lake. There's creeks and rivers that go into it, a lot of different diversity in the water clarity and the cover you have. But it's, like I said, it's just a matter of committing to what you're doing. I have no doubt that you could go out and catch a good bag of fish flipping right now if you're in the right water and you key in on the right bait, the right size, and trailer combination, all that. So just because you have a bad day on one end of the lake doesn't mean you can't make a move and have a good day the next day.
That's so true, and I think it's going to be really interesting, because we're going to be going out next week to Grand Lake in Oklahoma, and it's a lot more of a dirty water fishery, and so you're not going to have 8 to 10 foot of visibility. We might have 3 to 5 feet of visibility at the clearest.
Right, yeah.
And so I think it's probably going to flip from being a little bit more productive for me on Table Rock and Clearwater to maybe being a little more effective for you in that shallower, dirtier water, just given the fact that the lake is high still, and you're in that dirtier water. But there are going to be ways to catch them offshore, there are going to be ways to catch them up shallow, and I know we'll be able to at least figure out something when we go there.
Yeah, exactly. And there's always, that's one of the things that we can share with everybody, is there's always more than one way to catch them. It's just that one technique may outproduce another, depending upon a lot of conditions, depending upon time of the day, the weather you have, the weather coming in, just a lot of environmental conditions. So that's what makes fishing so interesting. It's just, even, I don't care how long you do it, it's always a challenge.
Oh yeah. Well, today was definitely a challenge. Again, the conditions weren't ideal. High bluebird skies, no wind, and the clear end of the lake, that's tough. I was having trouble getting bit or keeping them on the Spybait, and that was the only bait I could get them on. You were having trouble as well. So sometimes the conditions too just make the bite tough. So maybe changing the area of the lake, maybe going to a different fishing day when the conditions are better in that same section of the lake might produce some more results. But either way, we're going to be doing a lot more of these one-on-one, shallow versus offshore kind of challenges going forward, and you'll be able to see how we adapt, how different days set up better for one or the other, and also maybe what might be the best for you based on what you see me and Randy doing, based on your fishing style and what you kind of relate to in that way. So Randy, had a blast today. Can't wait to keep these up, and definitely excited for Grand next week.
Yeah, no doubt, man. We'll see you next week.
Sounds great. Thanks guys for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so you can check out all of our upcoming videos. Randy and I are making a lot more content together. We'll be doing how-to videos, we're gonna be doing on-the-water videos, all kinds of stuff. So subscribe to the channel if you want more information or want more content like this. And other than that, thanks again for checking out the video. We'll see you next time.